Welcome everyone to Stories on Sunset. I am Srethne, and every Sunday night I raise funds for my favorite venues on the Sunset Strip and Sunset Boulevard during these quarantine times. Um, and also my favorite theater out in St. Augustine, Florida. So those venues are Amoeba, Book Soup, Corazon Cinema and Cafe, Rainbow Bar and Grill, the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store, the Satellite, the Viper Room, and the Whiskey A Go Go. And so these stories are raising funds, as I mentioned earlier, to my favorite small businesses and venues all over the on both coasts. And so these stories are pretty much about my journalism years out in LA from 2009 to 2014. And and these stories are what happened outside of my articles that I wrote, these that I didn't want to squeeze onto the 400 words that I usually write for these articles. So I saved these special stories for off the record because my articles were mainly what they did on stage and what songs they sang and all that stuff. So these fun stories were not on there. Um, I didn't put them in there for a good reason, but this story takes place at the Key Club. The show was on November 29th, 2012. I had to Google it, and it was for UFO. They were on their tour called Seven Deadly Sins, I believe. And I remember like looking them up like in the LA Weekly and putting my credentials in. And at first, when I moved out there, I didn't have a plan of concert journalism or how much I wanted to write, and I set my goal to like 100 concert articles, just bands from local to internationally known, and um, and then I knocked them out of the park with 100 articles, like really fast, because there was concerts almost every night, and they were most of them are all my favorite bands, and so I thought, well, I'll just play another game. Why don't I write another do another challenge where I write about a band or an artist that's from A through Z. And I didn't have anyone that was under listed under U yet, so the perfect opportunity arrived with UFO, and so I had no knowledge of them whatsoever. I just said I just needed a U to finish off my alphabet series, my alphabet soup, if you will. Um, so um, I I went to the Key Club, put in my credentials, got accepted, and they were all waiting for me. And I've covered a lot of shows at the Key Club at that particular time, up to that date, and so I knew there was no barricade for me to stand in and run around and shoot bands with my camera. So I I like I usually do. I'm like the first one in, the last one out with this one, and there was a lot of people in there, and they arrived on stage, and I didn't I was expecting like a younger like uh demographic off stage in the crowd and on stage as well, but they were all in they were all in their they were much older than me, if you will. um so that was a shocker to me, and then I did my research, and um, later on after the show ended. But one of the cool things that did happen was I was front row, taking all the cool shots that I possibly can of the band, and I remembered like I was I was busy. The guitarist or the bassist or whoever that was, I can't remember who it was at that time, but it was like a long time ago. It was like a couple years ago, like 8 years ago. So he noticed me like just photographing and writing my article and all that stuff, just getting carried away with the journalism. And so I as the whole set came to an end, he the ladies that were surrounding me were just like just throwing their arms at the UFO, and I'm like, wow, these guys can rock, and so he moved everyone's hands out of the way because the ladies were thinking that he was reaching out for them, but he was actually reaching out to me. and he gave me a set list and to put in my journal to like, which was just pretty awesome. So I incorporated their set list into the article that way because I had no idea what the name of the songs were, and that definitely helped out a lot. So that was a pretty cool memory of the UFO story that I had. And then as I mentioned earlier, I went back to the office, the studio that I was apprenticing at, and wrote the article then and there, and used the set list as my guide to like write what song they sang and this and how the crowd reacted and what they did on stage and stuff like that. Um, and I researched UFO, and they've been around since the '60s. I'm like, holy crap, they have been around for a long time, and they have to be like, um, you know, the other band that I got to cover that were around in the '60s were the Doors. And so the cool thing about that journalism is that you can time travel if you're at the right spot, and you can go back to like the '60s and write about the Doors and UFO. And then you can bounce in the '70s and write about a band that was formed in the '70s and '80s and '90s and 2000s. And that's what my experience was like as a concert journalist out in LA was. Like I got to like cover each decade of music, and it was the perfect time where venues were still open and all that stuff. And I'm trying my very best with these stories for the venues that are still out there not to close. So as a friendly reminder, that's my UFO story. But as a friendly reminder, I'm raising funds for Amoeba, Book Soup, Corazon Cinema and Cafe, the Rainbow Bar and Grill, the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store, the Satellite, the Viper Room, and the Whiskey A Go Go. The links are on the bottom. So you can go to their websites or their GoFundMe's, and they'll take you from there on how to donate and all that stuff. So keep those venues alive after this whole quarantine ends, so that way you can see bands that are as old as UFO and have been around since like UFO, and some new bands too. So it's very important for us to keep those venues open so everyone can rock the stages once again. Um, as always, this is Sureth. This is my um, message in a bottle. This is my SOS to the world. This has been this week's Stories on Sunset, and next week I will be sharing the story of we're going back to the Key Club, but this time I'm going to be sharing the story of my experience with the rapper known as The Game. So tune in for that. Same Stories on Sunset time and same Stories on Sunset channel. So this is going to go on my website. So see you then.